So we're gathering together the second wave of hospitals. There was a procurement for geothermal procurement about just over a year ago, and we've got two of the trusts that took part in that on the call today. And the idea is you get a chance to ask them how miserable an experience it was and what their learning was from that. Just to kind of set the context and everything else, we'll do a short description of the two schemes at Salisbury Hospital and Wythenshawe. Both of them are deep geothermal schemes on the BGS database scheme, and we've got a Q&A with each of them. They each chose Star Energy, so we have a common contractor on with them. About a week or so ago, we had the session with Eastbourne, and we introduced the therapy system, so it's a shallower geothermal system. If it turns out that's more suited to your site, you may want to look at the video of that. Hopefully that's on the NH Power website. But today we've got a chance to speak to both Salisbury Trust, Wythenshawe, and Rick Evans of Star Energy. Okay, because we're close to the procurement now, we're majoring on the actual procurement itself. So Simon, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thanks, Clive. Afternoon, everyone. It's just afternoon. Yeah, so I'm Simon Dennis I'm head of commercial at Salisbury NHS Trust. I'm here with my sort of procurement hat on. My estates colleagues unfortunately couldn't make this call, but as Clive said, Rick at Star Energy is our contractor, so I'm sure he'll be able to answer any technical questions about the project. We're carrying on far better than I can. But if I give you a quick overview of the procurement bit and also the support that is available for the next group of trusts, and then we can talk a little bit about the the challenges and the benefits, but the challenges we've had at Salisbury. Needless to say, pheasants are amazingly one of the challenges we've had, but there you go. That's probably of being in a rural community. Next slide, please, Clive. Thanks. So what are we doing on the call? Well, as well as procuring our own project, we've worked in the renewable energy space for quite a long time now, and made it very much sort of an area of our own. So our procurement expertise through my managed services team, which I run, offer out to other trusts as well. We already work with about 800 in education, and all we do is at no cost to you as trusts. So it's sort of free expertise, if you like, and hoping for, certainly with NH Power, we're supporting the collaborative by putting procurements in place, because otherwise we're not going to get the reduction in carbon that we need to for the NHS's targets. Next slide, please. So part of our expertise sits in Wolverhampton, which we procured for Carbon Energy Fund. That's not a lake in the middle of the picture. A few people thought it was at an exhibition last week. That's actually the NHS first owned large-scale solar farm. That's taking the trust to savings of about £1 million a year and about 60 to 75% off-grid for electricity power when that comes online fully for its second phase. And the next part of that is looking at battery storage to be able to obviously time shift power generation. That was funded through a mix of trust funding and public sector decarb scheme. And we can talk about that as one of the learnings, if you like, in the next bit. And the risk for that is carried by the contractor as well, who worked very closely with us to get to that point. Next slide, please. Slightly more relevant for today is we've delivered the first 5 procurements for deep bore geothermal. I'm trying to remember where they all are now. I should know 2 of them because 2 of us are on the call. But I think the others are Eastbourne, Preston, and Southampton are sort of lagging a little bit behind and working out what they want to do at the moment. But these are deep bore, so this isn't ground source heat pumps. This is, going down to about 2,500–3,000 meters. Fine if you're in Iceland, where you can just put a spade in the ground to get 80 degrees hot water. A little harder in the UK. So that was the project at Salisbury, which we funded again through a mix of PSDS, which have covered about 90% of a whole bigger project as well. So there's renewed solar panels in there. There's upgrades to our infrastructure. The trust have backed it with about 1.5 million to take the 10% of PSDS requirement. And then Star Energy are carrying a fair degree of funding risk on that as well. And that'll ramp up through the stages as hopefully we move from each successful stage to the next one. Next slide, please. Slide. So benefits of working as a collaborative for you as buying organisations, if you like. Obviously, there's the dreaded public contract regulations in there, soon to be replaced by the Procurement Act, which does actually make life a bit easier. And we can see you through that process without everybody needing to run their own. There's the flexibility there. We're not going to come out and say this is your provider. Will be the options of what's best for your site. It's that support as well from my team, who I like to tend to think we know what we're doing a bit on this, but also every learning from other trusts that we've been through, we can pick up there, and that shapes each new set of requirements, if you like. So you won't fall into the same pitfalls as we've seen in others. And there is a value question there as well, that whilst the geothermal energy supply chain isn't massive in the UK, I think we'll probably agree with me on that one. It's there is some scale, and it's a lot easier for those contractors if they have a chance at looking at a reasonably coherent market offering, not just one here, one there, and having to respond to each of those in different time scales. Next slide, please. I think somebody might have an open mic. That's a bit better. So considerations for you guys as buying organisations. This is very much innovative in the UK. Deep bore geothermal has been around for a long, long time on Europe. It's been around for a long time in the UK, if you include the Romans. But apart from that, we haven't done a huge amount with it. So this is an innovative project. We used the innovation partnership for the very first tranche of procurements. That's a procedure under the public contract regs, because we don't know the best thing to ask for. We don't know a specification. We won't want to be saying the specification is you will go down to 2,500 meters with a 60 centimeter diameter bore, all that sort of stuff. Industry knows that. That's where their expertise is. So we went out with a very light sort of output driven procurement. This is what we want to do. We want to maximize the potential of geothermal energy. We want to look at how else that fits into our estate, and we're carrying out quite a big redevelopment at Salisbury, so including a new university campus and some college facilities and new accommodation and all that sort of thing. So the intention is that our geothermal will feed a bit of a local district heating network on site. So it's all that sort of expertise that it's the industry that holds. We don't. And potentially there's a mention there of heat as a service, because we all know we are the NHS. We have no money. Who knows? Apparently on the 5th of July, we're going to get millions, if you believe what appears to be in the news daily. But for now, we are the NHS and we have no money. I won't hold my breath on that one. So there's a mix, obviously, of support that Clive's expertise with public sector decarb scheme funding can bring in, and external funding through partners like Carbon Energy Fund to keep it off balance sheet, away from the glare of the Treasury, but equally enable you to develop the long-term savings. Considerations, other internal support, particularly early on. So your estates, your finance team, board have got to be on board with this and work together. It will be high public profile, and we briefed our comms team very early on about the F word. People think drilling, they think fracking. It absolutely isn't. But one of the lessons is particular. Somebody will inevitably, if you go out to procure, somebody will see the procurement advert. Somebody will say, "Oh my God, my hospital are drilling for whatever." And it all starts to go horribly wrong. So a good learning is to tackle that piece early on. But we haven't really had any pushback around that. Next slide, please, Clive. If you're this applies only to NHS trusts who may be on the call, and this is being rolled out on a timetable across the country. The NHS now falls under Cabinet Office spend controls. So that means that before we go out to procure with your name on it, we would at least need outline business case approval from the Cabinet Office. I think it's only the Northwest and Northeast who come in November this year. I think the rest of us are all in this rollout. There's a link there to the Future NHS site. I've got some more details and contacts for the Cabinet Office team at NHS England who are managing this. They are very helpful and they're very light touch, and you're not, I'm not going to say you're not going to, you are highly unlikely to get told no. It's more about them having pipeline of spend to fit in with Cabinet Office policy, and just to make sure that all of a sudden something isn't going to hit the headlines about X million being spent that they didn't know about. But if you need any help with that one, all the slides from the NHS spend control team at Cabinet Office, do let me know. Another consideration is talk to your local ecosystem. The Energy Act now means that we've got obligations around public sector buildings connected to district heating where they exist, or considering it where they don't. many organisations. We've got a large trust up in Norwich, for example. They've got a big hospital site. The university is next to them. They've got a massive business park the other side of the road. And it makes sense to look at those in one, particularly if you're a smaller site where your generation or your heat output from geothermal may be more than you can take. Then it's certainly worth talking to those partners around you. Again, Leeds is one where, through Carbon Energy Fund, the trust are working with the university up there, and it's that much more coherent. Again, it's shared output, it's shared expertise, and it can start driving down your costs. Last slide, please, Clive. That's about it for me waffling on. I will ask Rick to do a quick couple of minutes overview of actually what Salisbury's scheme is, if that's okay, Rick. If I say it, I'll get it wrong, so you know it better than me. But yeah, hopefully we can all support you on the next part of the journey anyway.
Right, okay, Rick, I know you're not familiar with this site. He took it off the Salisbury site. Thomas would have done this for us, but he's away today. So I'll pop on to the next one. There's a picture of the site. You want to take it from there, Rick, and just give them some overview?
Yes, thanks, Clive. Very good to talk to you all. As you heard from Simon there, we've been working with the team at Salisbury Trust for about the last year. We're now coming to the end of the feasibility stage. I've got a slide to talk a little bit about that. What does that mean? In effect, we've been carrying out a series of processes, both desktop and also in the field, and we're just about to conclude that. The work on a desktop study looks at legacy data from around the area, and so we've gone back into oil and gas studies that were carried out in the area using something called seismic, which is like an echocardiogram. Is probably the easiest way of describing it. It bounces off sound waves off of the rock right down to those depths, 2 to 3 kilometers deep, and from that we can work out what's going on. So we've been doing that, and we're actually going to carry out our own survey in the next few weeks, and that will enable us to sort of add to that information. In parallel with that, we've been working with the Environment Agency, and we've been working with the local planning authority in order to ensure that they're comfortable with what we're proposing to do, and that's a process called a pre-application. So we've carried that out, and this is all boiling towards a point where we'll be able to put together a draft economic proposal to the trust. So that will tell them how much heat, at what temperature, and at what price, before we then progress into the next stages of the project. So just to give you a little bit of a flavour of what that project might look like, Clive, can you show the next slide, please? So this is just down to the southeast corner of the site, and what we've been working on is the location as to where we're going to drill. I know a number of you will probably be preparing to go on the field trip to Eden Geothermal. Just to give you a bit of scale, the Eden well went to 5.2 kilometres, very, very deep and into hard rock. We all know that Cornwall's all very full of granites. So Salisbury isn't. It's into a sedimentary basin, so and it's nowhere near as deep. It's about probably less than half the depth at Salisbury compared to what the team at Eden had to do. So we don't need such a big rig. It will be about 25 to 30 meters high, and the blue outline that you can see on that slide shows the rig and all its ancillary workings. So that's going into the corner of the field, and this whole field that you can see, actually it's currently arable, but it's currently being put forward into the local plan. Simon talked a little bit about the development that's been put in place by the trust, and a lot of that's going in actually around it. So we're taking advantage of that site. And then once the rig is decommissioned, it shrinks back down to something, sort of size of 8 to 10 car park spaces. So then the buildings, light industrial, commercial, and so on, will actually go in around this, and the accommodation is down at the bottom of the hill. So it adds to the demand, the heat demand for the well. We believe there's more than enough to satisfy everything that the trust can need, around about 30 gigawatt hours per annum. And with more left over, which will then go to support both the new development any of that industry that I talked about, and then hopefully to begin the growth of a district heating network around the wider town of Salisbury as well. I'm conscious we're a bit time pressured, so I'll stop there. If anyone's got any questions, please put them in the chat. And yeah, happy to talk about the project a little bit more if you need.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Rick.
Clive.
Okay. There are no questions I spot particular to Salisbury yet, but don't hold back, people. Get on. Meanwhile, I'll introduce you to Mark Foden. I've given him a bit of a dodgy slide to work with, in the sense I've taken something off his website to get him started. Do you want to start here, Mark, or do you? Yep.
It's fine, thank you. Afternoon, everyone. Our journey is fairly similar to Salisbury's in many respects, so I'll just do a quick overview of the trust and kind of how we ended up being here. MFT, Manchester University Foundation Trust, one of the largest trusts in England, multi-site. We've got 10 different hospitals, 3 of which are large acute sites. We declared a climate emergency a few years ago now, and we're committed to reach net zero by 2038, which is in line with Greater Manchester Combined Authority. You move on to the next slide, please, Clive. So kind of how we ended up to be here. So within the last 5 years, our Wythenshawe site, we've de-steamed it onto LTHW. So it's a CHP-led transition technology, if you like. We've done loads of work on PSDS, on all our demand-side efficiencies. But then the next question is, where do we go to next? How do we fully decarbonise our sites? We've done lots of work decarbonising some of our smaller satellite buildings, moving to air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. But for an acute site, that comes with a lot of additional challenges. The electrical infrastructure in the area probably isn't suitable for air source heat pumps. The counterfactual costs of powering a site with the air source heat pumps is also probably going to be prohibitive. So that led us to being interested in the deep geothermal technology. Benefits of it, the expected temperatures. Because the high temperatures, it means we're more than likely going to be able to retain all our secondary side heat distribution network, which will give us a significant capital saving as opposed to an air source heat pump equivalent. And it provides a clear route to our heat decarbonisation. The next slide, please, Clive. This bit of an old picture of the Wythenshawe site, but the area we're looking at here, just above where it says Floats Road on the top right, is a bit of greenbelt land just on the border next to our staff car park. So we're looking at that area there. It's expecting quite a big rig. It's about 4 kilometres, Rick. We're anticipating at the moment. We've got a lot of unknowns at the moment. Rick might have a bit of an idea. I don't know what's 4 kilometres under the ground. He's telling me there's a lot of heat down there, and it's not going to be cheap to find out. Probably, well, I'm sure it will be cost effective in the long run if it does everything it says it will. But obviously that provides a risk to the trust, a financial risk in finding out, which is why the innovation partnership is working quite well. So we've agreed with Star Energy and Rick's team via the Carbon Energy Fund. It's a risk transfer piece, and they set gateways through the procurement process, whereby if all those gateways are met and it does what it says it does, the trust commits to another chunk of the cost, if you like, which in the end is intended to be rolled up into a thermal purchase agreement, where the cost per kilowatt hour should be more cost effective than an air source heat pump equivalent, and may well be in line with not too far what our current gas costs are either. And next slide, please, Clive. I think back over to Rick.
Yeah. So thanks, Mark, and a nice segue into that process. Mark talked there about this stage delivery program, and we go through each one of those. We've made a commitment to the trust on a price per unit heat basis, compared to that counterfactual you heard there, so an air source heat pump. And we continue to progress through the project, aiming to keep our price at or below that. And should we continue to do that, then we'll continue to progress the project, and we roll up all those costs into the project. So as you heard, it's effectively all taken on our risk, assuming the project is successful as we go through. Why are we able to do that? we're able to do that, particularly in certain locations of the UK. We've talked about the BGS study, which has identified those. We ourselves have got good geological and geophysical knowledge of different basins in there, and we're particularly confident in both Salisbury and Manchester cases. Actually, they're both on the edges of very good prospectivity areas, which is why we're able to make that commitment and progress along the journey that you see in front of you at risk. You heard me early on talking about the Salisbury. We're within feasibility, and it's the green block there. Wythenshawe's a little earlier on, so we're actually right at the start of that. We're hoping to be reprocessing the data through the remainder of this year, with a seismic acquisition program probably coming close towards the end of 2024. The next two stages, both consenting and detailed design, are much shorter. Once we've assured ourselves of that techno-economic feasibility, we can then progress on with securing planning conditions and all the permits that are necessary. As I mentioned earlier on, we actually do some of the pre-work during feasibility, assuring ourselves that we're comfortable with any conditions that the planners and the permitting authority may require us. So that's another one of the feasibility requirements that we like to sort of get in the back pocket and make sure that we've got a free run towards the end of the design processes. Once we get to the end of detailed design, that's where the rubber hits the road, if you pardon the expression. So at that point, we'll have compiled all of the costs, the drilling, the materials, all of the services that are required in order to target the geothermal resource. So we're then at a point where we can actually put together a firm commercial proposal. So that contains all of the costs that are likely to go forward, not just for the drilling, but actually for the future operation. And so there's a thermal purchase agreement that's put together at that point, which contains a single price, a unit heat price for the delivery of a quantity of heat for the next 21 years. It's broken down into 3 lots of 7 years, and that enables us to recoup all the costs that we've incurred through the earlier phases and expect to incur during. So again, it's all the risk is borne by us as the delivery agent, and it's provided to the trust at a fixed price of heat going forwards. As you heard from Simon, and in fact, we're doing something similar with the Wythenshawe Trust, looking to find other customers for the heat. The way the cost structure is put together, the more heat that's provided through the contract, the cheaper each unit of heat is going to be. Basically, it's a division. So the bigger the number on the bottom, the better the overall heat price. So we're working with the trust and looking outside of that for other customers in order to build on the total amount of demand, and that means everyone gets a better price at the end of the day. And again, conscious of time, so I'll finish there. If anyone's got any questions, please put them into the chat. And and there is a question. Excellent.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Clements. I'm at King's Mill Hospital down in the Midlands. What kind of timescale are you predicting to get to the construction phase if all goes well? Just out of interest.
Yeah, so the timeline between sort of feasibility and detailed design, so beginning of feasibility, detailed design, that's going to be of the order of 2 years. Okay. It is dependent, and Simon will probably share my frustrations as what's going on with Salisbury. We've had some unforeseen delays there, actually gaining access to land, which has slowed things down a little more than we would have hoped. And bureaucrats, be they from the councils or from the EA, they tend to like to stick their oars in and slow things up. But around about 2 years is a good figure to have in mind. And then the construction phase itself is probably going to be of the order of sort of 15 months. And that's the amount of time it takes us to construct the site, bring the rig on, do the drilling, take the rig away, and then tidy up the site. As I talked about earlier on, shrinking from somewhere of the order of 5,000 to 6,000 square meters and then bringing that back down to about 150, 200. So that space is then freed up and able to be used for other purposes. So I said total duration about 3.5 years.
So that's pretty quick. Can I ask another question? Just because one of the things that we've been navigating is the procurement issues. So did the Wythenshawe team come directly to you, or have they done procurement with other businesses like yourselves?
We did that as part of the first tranche of 5 trusts. So my team at Salisbury NHS Trust ran the procurement for those first 5 sites. So okay. we took that load off them and obviously worked with their procurement teams, but we did all the upfront procurement part, which is the plan for the next group as well.
Okay, and what did you have to go to 3 different to do 3 different people and all of that kind of stuff, or did you just go straight for GT Energy?
No, we ran it as an open market procurement using a mechanism called innovation partnership. So I think I'm trying to remember, we had about
we had four
now, Clive.
We had 4. So we had GT, we had Eden, who did the Eden project, we had Eon, and we had a collaboration between Vital Energy and Town Rock from Scotland. Okay. So those are the 4 the bid. I hope this time I might get more. I'm trying to get as many bidders to the table as I can, but it is a newish market for this country.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay. Right. So the idea is you can choose your own partner in your own sweet way and work with them in partnership.
There's sorry, can I just come to George's question? Well, in fact, now you put your hand up, George. Is it going to be the same one you just put in the chat?
Yes, it was. I'm sure I'll be able to pick it up. But
you're a little faint, George.
Never been called that before. If you're committing to expanding on the heat network and you've got an original signatory to the agreement, and then we're expanding, does the network cost then sit with anybody coming online later down the line, or how do you refactor the costs to allow for heat network expansion?
So that's a great question, and I think actually it differs from the 2 projects. So in the case of Salisbury, I think what we will be doing will be providing our heat into a network which is going to be built by others in parallel with our project. So there's the plan for a new district heating network to be put in around the site, the picture that you saw earlier on. And we will have a single offtake point and supply into that. Whether the heat ultimately then goes into the hospital or into that new development, for us it's just 1 meter that's doing all the necessary work. One of the options that we're looking at with the trust at Wythenshawe is actually a little more towards the question you just posed there, where there's an offtake to the trust, and then a secondary offtake which will go down a purpose-built heat network to another customer. In that scheme, that other customer would be bearing the cost of the building of that network, but the added heat load still benefits the trust. So in effect, the trust is getting all of the benefit because that number on the bottom of the fraction is bigger. But they're not having to see the cost of the additional development. Ultimately the commercial structures are flexible, and we will be driven by how much demand can be committed to by whom at what point.
It might help. George will know the site well, but for anyone else, Salisbury is a quite rural site on the outskirts of the city, and there is obviously, as in many areas now, infilling development gradually creeping up the hill, as we call it, to us. One of the good things about the New Energy Act is that, if ABC Homes come along and said, I want to put 600 homes on that land between the city and the hospital, they would be obligated to actually come and talk to us or our network operator about connecting into that district heating network as part of their new build planning consent. So the Energy Act's made it quite easy for customers, potential new customers, to be brought to you rather than having to go out and hunt for them all the time.
Okay, so I think the procurement is chosen to be as flexible as possible. So you choose a partner that suits you. You work largely to your own timescale, as long as you don't go completely mad, and you agree with your partner how you want to do it, and that's how it will come about. So you've hopefully got a lot of flexibility about it. What I'm trying to do is trying to make it as efficient as possible. So I'm trying to get the list of names for this year together for this month, if I can, so that I can put them in a paper that we've drafted to Cabinet Office seeking permission to procure, because it doesn't seem sensible to just write about the ones in the south that are forced to go to Cabinet Office. We'll probably declare them all to Cabinet Office in the hope that because we're really good boys, they'll be very nice to us. So I'm trying to do that towards the end of the month. You might need to go to the board to ratify your wish to go to market or something. That can take place in July and if need be August, whilst we're busy sorting out the Cabinet Office and whilst we're drafting the procurement documents, because when we've drafted those, you'll want to look at them and you'll want your procurement people to look at it. And that all takes a little while. So we'll be getting on with that while you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And then if there's anything else that you need to consider, like your site steam, you're very unlikely to get steam from geothermal energy. So you need to de-steam. So if there's something specialist you need about the site, then we've got some time to try and line that up, make the two bits come together. I'll just put a link to the event site. I'll keep adding events to the event site as time goes on. There's obviously the Q&A, which we're busy with now. There is tomorrow there's a question more about the actual procurement itself. Simon, I'm rather hoping you're going to help me with that, with these new slides.
I'll be there.
That'll be really good. So we'll do that. We'll do more procurement slant tomorrow for people who just want to know how it goes or bring a procurement person. And then we've done a visit to therapy about a week or 10 days ago to see the shallower geothermal that can work anywhere in the country. And we're off this week on Thursday to see the Eden project. I still have some free tickets for people who want to come. That would be nice if you told me sooner rather than later. So you'll get a chance to see the site, and you'll get to see the site of the biggest rig ever known to man, or at least to drilling a geothermal well in the UK, because they're going to drill 5.4 kilometers into solid granite rock. But you'll get to see that and see how small a well actually is. And then you could spend the rest of the day enjoying the rest of the site there. So I'm hoping we'll get a good tour there. I'm keeping an eye out for questions.
We've got a couple of hands up.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, then I'll shut up.
If we go to Costas first. Costas, sorry if your surname's before your name on NHS Mail. I'm reading it, and I always get the same. So apologies if I've got you the wrong way around.
No, it's not a problem at all, Dennis. Just two questions. It is regarding actually with the cost settings, because ERI be in the middle of Aberdeen mean that the microseismic grid design and the security of microseismic and drilling sites, it is quite difficult for planning or whatever we speak about. Actually, we have an element of concern here, and I want to know if you're going actually for deep geothermal, 5 kilometers and all those things, and the ejection and etc. created, and this is a fact, because I finished actually one course for geothermal with the University of Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, and one of my concerns is the microseismic which actually created during the injection of the water down there and return back actually hot water. And the number two, it is if you're going to make actually in the middle of the city just a hole, you need actually permission of the Act of Mines, because it'd be more than 300 meters. So let me know what exactly happened in these two questions, number one, number two.
Yeah.
Seismic and permission.
Yeah.
So that question's got you all over it, Rick.
Hopefully, please. So first question first. I mean, deep geothermal. We are so behind the curve in the UK. It's painful. But you can go to France, you can go to Germany, you can go to the Netherlands, you can go to many other countries, even where they're doing similar technologies to what we're proposing here, and they do them in the centre of the city. Paris is quite literally littered with deep geothermal wells, all to about 2,500 meters.
Yeah,
your point about seismic is valid. That's why it's absolutely critical during the design process to understand precisely what you're going to be producing and injecting back into. And that's why, I mean, if I can blow the trumpet of the industry for a moment, that's why you come to a specialist who does this rather than someone who's got a rig and you know, just doing it as a hobby. You know, it is a specialty job, and these projects have to be done right.
Because I have actually studied very well the Eden, and because coming from Greece and be just in a distance my house in Greece, 2 kilometers for actually just geo, it's coming actually 37 degrees. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And to actually make a whole 5 kilometers down for deep geothermal and just created actually the microseismic, either the Eden project, we have actually just have a specific grid which actually be all around and actually recording precisely that be 0.0 something in a Richter scale, blah, blah, blah. And so just be absolutely fine. The problem here, it's actually the mine act. You need actually to give a permission to make the hole as well, which be a very, very important thing. And the other thing, it is actually permission from the local authority and need to be a guarantee, not just a warranty, but need a guarantee that not any effect of seismic activity be during actually the process of this, because with deep geo, we speak about 50 years lifespan. The project is not just a couple of years. We speak about long life.
So you're right in saying all of these things, and all I can say to you again is one, that's why you speak to someone who's done this before. But secondly, if I may, I talked about the feasibility process. And during that stage, we are engaging with the regulators and everyone necessary to ensure that what we're looking to do is viable, and we don't progress until you've got all of that regulatory approval.
Eric, you use actually the correct word, a feasibility study, detailed feasibility study, which actually we know exactly where we are. If the end of this feasibility study be some risk, you take it or don't take it and go ahead. Okay, this is actually the correct thing. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Got a couple of questions, Sean, and then it's Beverly. I'm not sure I got you in the right order, but that's it was Beverly first. But go with you, Sean.
First. I'll let
Sorry, Beverly will stay with us.
Yeah.
All right.
Confused. Do you mean Sean or me?
Sean, sorry, I did confuse everybody. Sean, you go first because I said you first, even though
Okay. So apologies if I missed some of the other meeting things. They come a bit out of the blue, and I don't know who put me on the list, but somebody put me on the list, and I am interested. So whoever did, thank you very much. What is your expected outturn, like cost equivalence to gas? You know, I know you can then calculate thermal and all the other, and people calculate what technology and usage and efficiency and blah, blah, blah. But what is your actual, you said there's one rate at the end. I suspect that rate has some form of inflation related to electrical pricing and pumping and compressing, if you're compressing, depending on what temperature you get and what you're trying to get to. But what is your expected? Because we are doing currently, I don't call it geothermal, we're only going down to 230. Well, we're down at 230 meters on our site, and we pull out water out the sandstone aquifer, and we pump it up and then compress it and then put it back, and it's quite it's an expensive capital investment to start, and I was just Alex funding, but our eye has always been on gas and electrical pricing, and gas is going down again at an astonishing rate because of LNG, and obviously there's discussion about carbon or not, but if it's super expensive to decarbon, soon policy will change. If it's twice the cost or 3 times the cost to operate non-gas assets. So, where are you sort of thinking that you're going to end up at in terms of an average cost of an equivalency of gas per kilowatt unit? Gas is down at, I think, predicted going back down to 4p or so a kilowatt. Where do you think you're being comparable to that?
The simple answer is every project will be different, and it's different because the bits on the top of the equation, as I talked about earlier on, the costs are dictated by the geology in the area. So that'll be the depth. Mark said earlier on, it's going to be somewhere around 3.5 kilometers depth, and maybe a well of 4 to 5 kilometers in order to target that. Simon in Salisbury, it's probably going to be 2 to 2.5 kilometers depth. So massive difference in depth. That equates to a different capital cost. The other key variable is the bottom of the equation. How much heat demand do you want? And that will depend on the size of the hospital. It will depend on the number of other people that you can connect into it. I'll give you a definitive one, but I can talk about the process. And the process is very, very simple. We look to identify, that through that techno-economic feasibility stage, the first step in the process that we talked about earlier on, we come to the end of that and we give a price. And that's our expected cost for the project. If that's not acceptable, if that's not seen as something that the trust are willing to move forward with, then we stop the project there and then. We don't sink the capital cost of drilling the well, because it's not in my interest to incur the tens of millions of pounds that's needed if I've got a customer that's not willing to buy the end product.
But have we done an average model? Like, are we going to finish this conversation with yourselves telling me that it's 8, 10, 4, 3?
We've done modelling.
Is there one that'll give me a unit value? Because ultimately that's what a board's going to want. They don't care about anything else.
Do you want to, Stephen? I've seen you've come up. Do you want to talk about your model?
Hi there, Sean. Yes, we have done a model indeed, and that will give you an outturn price for heat. It takes an assumption on the capital cost for delivering the geothermal well, and it assumes values for existing electricity and gas costs, which of course might very well vary depending on what position you're at. So yes, it will give you a number, and you can play around with it to see what it looks like when you vary the tariffs. Obviously, it may not give you the whole story. So actually, when you come to do your business paper for the board, you'll probably also want to consider other things, like, for example, whether or not what this solution gives you are some significant avoided costs from not running existing fossil fuel plant. There may also be other things depending on your site as to whether or not you are subject to UK ETS, and that by going down this route you avoid some of those ETS payments. So I mean, there's a lot to sort of fit into the answer, and the answer, as I think has been mentioned, will depend on your particular site, how much heat you're going to take, etc., etc., etc. But yes, we do have the ability to give you a number, and you can play around with that number.
Could you give us one example of a capital cost of, say, 25 million, 2 meg usage, and a 21-year plan? How much equivalent gas cost would it be? How much per kilowatt? So you can go and say, is it twice the price of gas equivalency? Is it half the price? Is it 4 times the price? Just something like that, I think, would be really useful. It just puts a number, because I can go and talk to boards about these things, and we had to do that for our boreholes, and that's ultimately all they wanted to know. Everything else was nice and it was all fluffy and great, but it was ultimately, how much is it going to cost, equivalent to what we're doing now. What is the tax to be green?
Mark's put his hand up, so rather than me giving away all his secrets and how good a negotiator he is, I'll let him tell you what we've done.
Cheers. I won't. We're working to a price range at the moment, so there are so many unknowns on what we're doing that it'd be impossible for Rick at this point in time to say it is going to cost you X. But some of our considerations are obviously in our discussions with Rick and his team. We're talking about cost of delivered heat. So as Stephen alluded to, there are a lot of avoided costs in getting to that compared to the price of gas. There'll be O&M costs of running the boiler plant. There's the boiler efficiency. everything else which we need to wrap into that cost of gas to then make it comparable to that cost of delivered heat. Gas is changing all the time, and you're quite right, Sean, public policy, and who knows where the election is going to go and what the policy will be next year. So in our board approvals to get to the stage we've got to at the moment, we've been keeping an eye on what our known gas costs are for the next few years as a comparison. Also what the counterfactual is for the decarbonisation. So as a trust, as an NHS, we are committed to doing that at the moment, and that's what we do know. You can't install a deep geothermal overnight or within a couple of weeks, so it is a long-term plan, and our long-term strategy is to decarbonise. So the price range we're working to, there's an estimated low point and high point of what that will be. That is at the moment is considerably less than what our counterfactual of electrification of our heat is through air source heat pumps, but marginally higher than what our current gas costs are. Both of those things might move in the next few years, but we're working to what our current policy and strategy is.
Thanks, Mark. I'm aware we've
Appreciate that.
I'm aware we've possibly got the clock heading against us. Beverly has been waiting incredibly patiently.
That's okay. I think like the chap who spoke, person before last, was saying sort of a bit late to this group and these meetings, although we have been in contact with Salisbury before, as we're in the same region. But you've mentioned this sort of deadline of putting things in and the sort of second wave of procurement. Is there likely to be a third wave? Because we're at a situation where we've got funding for a techno-economic feasibility study for deep geothermal and
We'll keep doing it as long as people ask us to.
Okay.
Obviously, there are, and it may well be that if the first 10 we don't get to the first 10, we might think about letting that slip a little bit for the sake of then having a better offer to the market. We'll certainly keep in touch with all the trusts interested, and we can work that bit out.
Thank you very much. And is there anything we should specifically be looking at in our techno-economic feasibility? Is that something we could talk about offline, just to check that we've got, that scope?
Yeah, I know we'd be happy to share what we did for our board with you guys. So I'll have a chat with Thomas and see if I can get hold of a cassette of those. I've got your email anyway, Lovely. So leave that bit with me.
Thanks very much.
I'm not sure if Clive's disappeared and kind of left me holding the baby, which probably wouldn't be the first time. No, Clive is back. Excellent.
We had a complete meltdown. The computer completely overheated and shut down. But you seem to be going great guns. I managed to keep an eye on proceedings from afar, and we've picked up Beverly's question as far as I can see, because we kind of made her wait a long time for an answer.
Yeah.
So thank you for filling in the gap, and apologies I vanished. We have taped this, so we will put it on the website. Are there any other questions we want before we go? I see we've got a punt for Taylor Swift, so that was enjoyable. George, you're back with us again. Have you got something to add?
Yeah, I did raise the question. You're aiming for 10 for your next round of procurement. How many have you got committed so far?
I'm not quite sure, George. I don't want to put people off by saying I'm full, because I don't know that's for true. But I've certainly got a list of more than 10. But whether they've all completed the paperwork or not, I don't know. But you're on it, so you're okay.
Yeah, no. That was just out of sort of curiosity, really, just to see how things were.
The 10, the 10 is kind of an arbitrary number we've set, mainly because I can go up that far without taking my shoes off. But yeah, if we end up with sort of 12 or 15 really interested in the first tranche, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, or we might shrink it down, just depending upon resources and all the rest of it. So we'll see what the response is like, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then hopefully there'll be some sort of notification come around those who are progressing. Yeah.
Oh yes, I'll do that. In fact, you'll see the paperwork before it goes. So I'm not going to do anything in your name without telling you. So
okay, that's fine.
And there was a question whether we're procurement next year. I don't know whether we'll be one next year. I stepped down as chief exec of the Carbon Energy Fund earlier this year and decided to use my declining years trying to help with this. I might be dead by next year, or who knows what. So we'll see. So there might be one next year, or there might not be. So
those of us who are slightly more cheerful long term will say yes. We'll be happy to do a tranche 3. Hopefully not an in memoriam for Clive by that point.
Well, the way that it's going with NHS procurement and Cabinet Office, I don't think they want us to procure things. They just keep making it harder, don't they? So yes, there will be if I can, but I can't promise it. Okay, so that's there. But if you do want to be on, don't be put off by the fact that I've got a list, because they may back out or whatever it is. Feel free to come. Tomorrow we'll talk more about procurement, so Simon will talk to his same slides, I imagine, tomorrow, and more focused on the actual how the process works. So we'll describe a bit about how the risk sharing at the various stages goes there. But if there are no more questions, I'll let you all go, and thank you for your time. Only a few minutes late. If anybody's got a question, just stay on for a minute and feel free to ask it. Okay, thanks, Mark. I know you're really busy, so thank you for that. And Rick, you've had to step in and do too, so thank you for that. And Simon, I'll thank you in advance for helping me tomorrow as well.
Yeah, no problem.
And hopefully my PC won't melt like it did now. It's so hot. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's bloody team, isn't it? Okay.
All right, good to see everyone. See you all later.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Cheers.